What caused the end of your marriage? I felt like a mother, and I don't have children. Same. Taking care of a man-child for 15 years was exhausting. Then I got really sick this summer with what was either massive ovarian cysts or ovarian cancer. I was hospitalized for days while waiting for the gyno-oncology surgeon to return from vacation to do an exploratory laparotomy to remove the masses and biopsy them. In the worst pain of my life, terrified, and my husband was barely visiting me. Then he refused to take the day off work for my surgery. He could have, but he wouldn't. He'd have let me wake up to a cancer diagnosis without his support. Fortunately, the masses were benign, and I began the slow road to recovery. My sister took me home when I was discharged. To a dirty house my husband hadn't bothered to clean or change the sheets or anything. He continued to not take care of me. As soon as I was well enough to do so, I moved out and filed. Coming home from a trip, my husband picked me up from the airport in my car. I noticed that the back window was cracked open. It was the kind of small, triangular window that you have to crack open from the inside manually. I asked him who was sitting in the back seat. Without thinking, he said it was his best friend and the friend's wife. I asked, then who was sitting in the front seat? He laughed nervously and didn't answer. That was how I found out he was having an affair. There were a ton of things, but one thing that really did it for me, story time. Our youngest was really ill. I took him to the emergency room 3 times. My husband complains about the cost each time and gaslighting me that I was overreacting. The 3rd time I had to carry him into the hospital, and our kid, 7, finally got a chest ray, and within minutes we were in an ambulance. He had severe pneumonia. Looking back, honestly, he was actively dying. So after 4 IVs, breathing tube, pigtail tube to drain the fluid off his collapsing lung, X-ray after X-ray, CT scans, he finally turned a corner. But it wasn't a good prognosis. We were lucky. In the meantime, my MIL came to help with our older child. She proceeded to get absolutely shit-faced every night she was here, a woman in her 70s falling down drunk. I was so angry at her selfishness. Also, I missed my own mother's memorial service. Obviously, I had no choice, but it was still a blow. I wanted to be able to remember her with her sisters, see her face, and hear her voice in them. Instead, I listened in on speaker from far away. This was on day 12 of my youngest being hospitalized, and we were waiting to be discharged. I was emotionally, physically, and mentally exhausted, and I just wanted to get my son home. As we are waiting for an available doctor to discharge us, my husband called and asked if he needed to be there for his child that barely pulled through on the day of my mother's memorial service while his mother was there making everything harder. That he even asked that question galled me. It took me 3 trips to the car by myself, since after that long we had clothes and toiletries, blankets and stuffies, puzzles, games, books, etc. I couldn't look at my husband the same after that. Edit. Thank you, everyone, for your kind words and support. Means a lot. Nothing really went wrong. Nothing really went at all. We had been dating for 7 years, so we thought it was a safe bet. Realized a year into our marriage that we were better as separate people. And it fucking sucked. There were a ton of tears, a whole lot of begging not to let it end, a whole bunch of trying new things, living separately, splitting money, etc., so that we could be apart together, but it just didn't work. We were just live-in friends when it came down to it. And I think, too, that if we hadn't gotten married, we never would have seen it. It was sort of the impetus for us both to move on, as shitty as that might sound. It was a shakeup in our otherwise completely humdrum, stable life. And it ended up working out for the best, but it fucking sucked for a long time. Married to his job, dating his computer, no time for his wife. We moved across country for his job to a place I've never felt home at. I've been miserably homesick for nearly a decade, and he preferred where we used to live too, but wouldn't even consider a job change. Often he got home at 7-8 p.m. because he stayed late working. I was home alone 4 hours a day. He could keep the same schedule I did, just chose not to. Then he would want to watch TV or play computer games late, so I'd go to bed alone, every night, for years. He wanted the money and the job, he got it. I want a life outside of work and a partner who actually wants to spend time with me. Hasn't ended yet, but maybe soon. Partner is unfulfilled and restless, in and out of jobs constantly, and wants to change countries every time depression hits, and also wants to have children, and doesn't understand why I don't feel secure and relaxed enough to do so. I am the main financial provider, stable and reliable, and I would love to just focus on what we have and where we are, instead of throwing everything away. I have been living in anxiety for as long as we lived together and didn't know why. Now I think I know, but I don't want to accept it. And I'm still working on broadening my horizon and relax a little, but it gets more difficult the more I try. Death by 1,000 cuts, really. She started coming home from work miserable every day, ranting and raving about every single perceived slight perpetrated against her. It was non-stop negativity from when she walked in the door through when she ate the dinner I cooked. I wasn't allowed to have friends she didn't know or approve of. Sex was very one-sided. She had to get off first, but rarely had the energy left to take care of me. Hated oral, but insisted on it for herself. Total starfish. She was mean, just unnecessarily mean, to service staff and to me at home. She hadn't always been like that, but as we grew up, she changed. Anytime I expressed my feelings about this and how it was hurting my feelings for her, instead of making an effort to understand me, she just defended her toxic behavior and said that I was the one with the problem. We tried therapy, but she didn't take it seriously. And after a few sessions, she just said, "We're fine, right?" And yet, when I told her I was done, she was blindsided. I went to work for a half a day on my first day after maternity leave. My husband rushed out of the house kinda quick, said he was late for work. I checked on my 6-week-old son, and he had a bruise on the side of his face in the shape of a handprint. My husband hit him so hard, he hemorrhaged the opposite eye. It took everything I had not to kill him. My biggest fear was I didn't want my son in foster care while I went through the process. I never saw this coming. He was always holding, feeding, changing him. Asked my ex for 3 things. First, get urgent home repairs done. Second, stop speaking negatively to me. Literally would go months without a positive word to me, always negging me, criticizing me, degrading me. Third, put the thermostat above 60 in the winter, worked from home, and it was so damned cold from November to April. I told him this in October. January, moved out. He half-assed tried to do number 2, but would inevitably lapse back into negging when one of our adult sons was there. Swore he was trying, wanted to stay together. In actuality, had taken up with his ex from 40 years ago behind my back, had said for 35 years that he hated her guts. Final straw was when he said had to accept her as part of his life if we stayed together. That was it for me. He prioritized her over me. Elle was done. Scheduled appointment with attorney quietly. 2 weeks later, he called me and said very condescendingly that if Elle was going to be a baby about it, he would give her up. Cue surprised Pikachu face and outright sobs when Elle told him, "Fuck, that's shit." Elle was done. He picked her over me, and he could go live with her for all Elle cared. He thought he would keep all our financial assets, attempted to hide the money he cashed out secretively. Because, he was so obviously a better person than me, and the judge would see how he deserved to keep his money. More surprised Pikachu when judge said he was a shyster and gave me my half. Haven't heard from him in almost 2 years and hope it stays that way. I'm an old lady. I'll have my friends, my kids and grandkids, a little part-time job, and a nest egg for emergencies. Have no interest in remarrying or even dating. For the first time in my life, I'm doing what I want when I want, and nobody to condemn me for it. My ex was in the army. Sometime during our 9 years of being married, he decided confiding in his battle buddies about his being unhappy in our marriage was a better choice than talking to me about it. Also decided sticking his dick in a subordinate was acceptable behavior. He figured once he asked for the divorce, he was no longer obligated to abide by our wedding vows, so started dating again. Funniest part is where, after months of insisting and the changing his mind, then me finally agreeing to the divorce, I caught him red-handed, and then actually getting the divorce. After all of that, we have had the official decrees in hang not even 2 full weeks, and he is asking me to take him back. Like, what? No. It's a long, weird story. We just moved into the house we'd finally bought after being married 9 years. We got into a fight, and at some point I asked, "Do you even love me anymore?" And she answered, "I don't know." Went to couples therapy for initial appointment, and when it came to be her time for a one-on-one appointment, she never showed. Our therapist called me out of concern. She wouldn't pick up for me either. So I leave my brand new job that I moved and bought a house for early to go check on her. She's on the phone with her mom, won't say why she missed the therapy appointment, says she doesn't want to do it, and just wants to talk to me instead. Pissed off because I spent a shit ton of money we don't have on this therapy adventure. But fine, whatever. I figure she didn't like that therapist, and I'd keep her talking until I could find another one. Months later, I accidentally found out she was talking to some 19-year-old kid on the internet and had told him she loved him. We were in our early 30s at the time. Then she proceeds to hack all her hair off short and lose her entire mind. I was done. She'd had multiple chances to tell me what was going on in safe environments, with safe people, and still chose not to. She forced an argument the day before Thanksgiving, and I told her we were done. We had to go to our relatives and pretend everything was fine the next day. She won't get a job, so she can leave, and I don't have the money to pay for her to leave, so things drag on for months after that. She finally decides to leave when I'm called to the other side of the fucking country for a work emergency of the "if you don't do this, nobody gets paid and we fold up" variety. So I spent a week in California while hoping my wife wasn't looting our house, destroying my shit out of spite. That was fun. My folks drove an hour to come feed my cats and make sure my house was still there for me. She just took whatever she could fit in her car and split. Fine with me. I haven't really ever spoken to her again. That's how it ended. We were married 10 years and together for a total of 15. We're strangers now.